Triple G says rivalry with Canelo Alvarez does not define his career. What's good, man? Had to do a video on this, man. But it's the return of What Do I Know Boxing. Man, let's break this down a little bit, okay? So Triple G says, indeed you're right that many boxers are characterized by the rivalries they had during their professional career, he told Bleacher Report. But at the same time, I don't think my rivalry with Canelo Alvarez is the only thing that characterizes my career. Just to point out a few things, I am the record holder for the number of defenses, 21 defenses. So he has 21 title defenses in the middleweight division. I have the biggest number of knockouts. Okay, I don't know about that, but I guess maybe he's talking about currently in the middleweight division. I think there are people who will remember me by that. There are people whom it would matter more. Okay, so let's talk about that. So here's the thing. First and foremost, let me tell you, Triple G wouldn't have to say this if he didn't revolve his career around Canelo so much. The truth of the matter is Triple G revolved his career around Canelo. He's most known for chasing Canelo. I mean, I'm just gonna be honest with you. His power, yes, he has power. His defenses, you can argue with that. I heard, he does have 21 title defenses, not consecutively, but you know that's cool. I think Bernard has the most consecutive defenses at middleweight in middleweight history with 20 defenses, but you know, his defenses, that's cool, but you know, if what I find funny is how like you got guys like when Wilder tied with who was it, Muhammad Ali for 10 defenses in the heavyweight division. You know, it's a lot of people that question it, like, well, who did he fight and all this type of shit. So I'm gonna pose that same question on Triple G. Let's talk about it for a second. Let's break down Triple G's career for a second, okay? Now, granted, we have to admit that Triple G was ducked. He was ducked. I'm not even gonna sit here and lie. He was ducked by Sergio Martinez. He was then ducked when Cotto beat Martinez. Triple G became Cotto's mandatory. He was then ducked by Cotto. At one point, he was avoided by Canelo Alvarez. Danny Jacobs didn't want to smoke with him at one point. Peter Quillen didn't want to fight him. He then stated that he would knock out anybody from 168 to 154. It was talks of possible him trying to get a fight with Carl Froch. That never came through. Chavez Jr. didn't seem interested at the time. Mikkel Kessler didn't want that fight. Andre Ward stated that he was willing to fight him at 168, but then they came back and stated that they'll fight Andre Ward at 164. And Andre Ward was like, no, if you're gonna come up to 168 to fight these guys, why not fight me? They didn't want to fight Andre Ward at 160. At 168, they then claimed that they would love to fight Mayweather. They would move down at 154 to fight Mayweather. Even though he said he would knock out anybody from 168 to 154, they said they would only be willing to move down to fight Mayweather. So, of course, when Canelo was fighting at his own weight of 155, you know, people were clamoring for a Canelo versus Triple G fight. Triple G stated that he wanted the fight to be at 160, which I do agree. If it's for the middleweight title, you know, why not have it at 160? At that time, Canelo wanted it to be at 155. However, at Canelo being the much bigger star in the A side, Triple G didn't want to fight Canelo at 155, even though they made the statement saying that they would knock out anybody from 154 to 168. So, you know, Canelo being at his catchweight at 155, Triple G didn't want to move down to fight Canelo and kind of went against his own words. Nevertheless, you know, Triple G, he then goes to, you know, he does not have the biggest name that Triple G has beaten is Danny Jacobs. Now, I do feel like Triple G won the first fight with Canelo, but if we're going off of just what's in the books, the biggest name that Triple G beat is Danny Jacobs. And besides that, like who else does he have on his resume? He has Kell Brook, which I found that very crazy because when Canelo Alvarez had Amir Khan to move up and he fought Amir Khan, Triple G was very, very, like, he was very, you know, they criticized the shit out of Canelo for that. Him and his team, Abel Sanchez, all them, Tom Loeffner, all them, they criticized the shit out of Canelo for fighting a welterweight, bro. Like, why are you bringing up the welterweight? And indeed, that was, you know, that criticism was, you know, rightfully so. I mean, you know, it's Amir Khan too. But then what does Triple G do? He does the same exact thing his next fight and fights a welterweight in Kell Brook. Now, albeit Triple G was trying to get the fight with Chris Eubank. Now, I don't believe that was Triple G's fault because we've known Chris Eubank to be like, his team, they do seem like they're rather hard to work with. I don't believe that it was Triple G's fault that Chris Eubank's fight didn't fall through, but I just found it very contradicting that Chris Eubank or that Triple G would then fight a welterweight after criticizing Canelo for doing the same thing. So, you know, I mean, he doesn't have like this big resume. I mean, and then to top things off, you know, man, it was so many things. It's so many things that I found wrong with Triple G in his career. Like, it was just crazy to me how at one point people were saying Mayweather should move up and fight Triple G. Mayweather should move, but nobody is telling Triple G at any point that he needs to move up. He's been at middleweight his entire career. Yes, Marvin Hagler did it, but Marvin Hagler, like Triple G, was avoided too, but got the big marquee fights and won them at that. But I just feel like, how can you criticize Floyd? You say Mayweather, people say, I'm telling you right now, if you go to people say that Mayweather ducked Triple G, even though they're not in the same weight class. I don't know how you can duck somebody that's not in your weight class, but whatever. Mayweather ducked Triple G, but then when you ask Triple G to move up, it's like, why does he have to move up? You know, it's just crazy to me. And then you go say, you know, well, Triple G didn't duck these guys, they're not in this weight class, this, that, but they make the statement that they would knock out anybody from 168 down to 154. It's the same as Jamal Charlo. We all criticize Jamal Charlo, like, bro, why don't you fight David Benavidez? You called him out, you said you would beat him, you said you would knock him out, go fight him, right? It's the same thing with Triple G. Triple G called out these guys at 168, but he still hasn't moved up to 168. Bro, it's guys that surpassed, like, look, Jamal Charlo, Demetrius Andrade, these guys were at 154 while Triple G was at 168 his whole career. These guys, Demetrius Andrade is finna make his debut at 168, and he hadn't even been in 160 nowhere near as long as Triple G has. So it's like, bro, like, I don't understand, like, why Triple G gets a lot of pass for shit, man, that people, other fighters get criticized for. And so going back to Canelo, you know, even at one point Triple G had 3 of the belts, and they were trying to make a fight with him and Billy Joe Saunders. Now, Billy Joe, in a statement a long time ago, came out and said Triple G would beat him and Chris Eubank at the same time, right? He would beat him at the same night. That's what he said. And like, that was like a ridiculous thing to say. So I do think that Billy Joe avoided Triple G at one point, but then they were trying to make the fight for undisputed. Billy Joe had the WBO belt. I believe it was the WBO belt or the WBA belt, one of those two. And Triple G had the rest of them. Triple G had the moment to fight Billy Joe, and I think he would have beat Billy Joe. He could have fought Billy Joe for the undisputed middleweight champion. We haven't had the undisputed middleweight champion since Jermaine Taylor. So he would have had the right to fight for undisputed, right? It was supposed to be like July of 2017. De La Hoya then comes out and says if Triple G fights Billy Joe in July, then he can't fight Canelo because we wouldn't have time to promote that fight. And what did Triple G do? He didn't fight Billy Joe Saunders. So how can you tell me that your career does not, that the Canelo fight does not define your career, bro? When you've had the chance right there to make a legacy fight and become an undisputed middleweight champion. And at that moment, if you would have been an undisputed middleweight champion, Because at the time, like I said, he had 3 of the belts. Canelo was stripped of the WBC. He had, so it's like, bro, at that time, bro, Canelo, what choice would Canelo have? He would have had to bow down to you because you would have had all the belts at the time. Like I said, I do believe he would have beat Billy Joe Saunders. So he would have had, Triple G would have had all the belts at that time, and Canelo would have had no choice but Canelo can't say, Canelo at this point, you can't say that you the A side. Well, you could probably say that you the A side, but it would no longer be 155. The 155 weight would have been out of the picture. It would have had to have been more of a 50-50 deal because, bro, you're undisputed. You have all the belts. Canelo's not bringing anything to the table but his name. So Canelo would have had to, he would have definitely had to compromise more in that situation, bro. Billy Joe Saunders, you know, like I said, had the WB, I think WB or WBA. Triple G would have, I definitely believe Triple G would have beat dude. But again, because he wanted to fight with Canelo, and I don't knock him for that because Canelo had a big payday, that was a big fight. But he still allowed Canelo to control and dictate his career. He then chased him again for the rematch and lost. So I gotta disagree, bro. Canelo definitely has been a humongous part of your career. Let me know what you guys think, man. Subscribe. Tell me what you think. But what do I know?